Not only do we have a great episode of Silicon Valley to talk about, we're excited to be joined by Suzanne Cryer, the one and only Lori Bream. So stay tuned, or you might get stuck eating the wheat thin.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AFTERBUZZ TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
That's right. Welcome to the Silicon Valley After Show. I'm Christian Bladt at Christian DMZ, joined as always at the far end of the desk by Phil Svitek. Say hello to the people, Phil.
Welcome. Listen, I would have not known that this is the Spanish version of Walking on Sunshine had it not been for the subtitles.
Yeah, because you hear that tune and you're like, well, I don't know, I don't even recognize this at all. And someone put this on YouTube basically right after the episode aired, because I guess this isn't a real song, but I feel like we needed it. Nate, before we get to our guest, please tell people where they can find you.
Hola, amigos. You can find me on social media at DogLikeNate. Excited to be here.
Estoy, Dog Like Nate. And Suzanne Cryer, thank you so much for joining us here on the show.
Thank
or
you.
as I should say, coming back to the Silicon Valley After Show, because as Phil pointed out last week, you were on in the first episode of season 2.
I know,
basically
right after I joined.
your first episode of the show. And you had so much fun, you're just now coming back. No, but thank you so much.
And how am I still here? I know. Yeah, who would have thought Lori Bream would survive?
Now, our usual third co-host, Jeff Graham, on Twitter at Jeffrey C. Graham, I'd say his plugs for him, could actually not be here. He worked so hard to get you here on the show, and then it all worked out for a week that he's actually not here with us. And before we go to him, I don't want to put you on the spot, but how do you think Lori would respond to that? Because to me, she would just hear that he was calling in and ask, why?
Well, I think yes, utter indifference.
Yeah, just completely baffled. But someone who does not have utter indifference, Jeff Graham. Jeff, say hello to Suzanne. We lost connection with him. That's how excited he
See,
is.
that's why Lori would say this is a liability.
Yeah, exactly. This whole thing is
Just an interruption.
Allegedly he's back. Jeff, are you there for real?
I am here for real.
Oh,
Well, say hello to our guest before I hang up on you.
I'm so
Suzanne,
sorry.
it's very, very nice to virtually meet you. Your performance was one of my favorites on the show, so I'm honored to join in the conversation today.
Well, I really appreciate that, and I'm sorry that my scheduling was so crummy. So it was really unintentional.
Hey, it's no problem. I'm just glad to be here with you guys.
You sound like Middleditch on the phone.
He's
You know what? I get that all the time.
I mean, you
That's
really
so funny
do.
you say that.
It's almost confusing.
Although we actually call him Jared because he acts a lot more like Jared. But now that I'm just hearing him and not
On the phone?
yeah, just hearing him on the phone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Either way, he's very smooth and has great people skills, as you can tell. Suzanne, and we'll get back to Jeff. Suzanne, as we referenced, you joined the show at the start of season 2. It was the untimely passing of Christopher Evan Welch, who played Peter Gregory. Talk a little bit about how your character, Lori Bream, was developed. I assume you auditioned for it. Talk a little bit about the process and how the idea was to have someone that fulfilled a similar role as Peter, but was clearly not, just an imitation of him.
Right, and there are certainly similarities between Lori and Peter. I don't think anyone would deny that. And, I'm sure there are people out there that are haters of Lori that just think I'm doing a bad job of imitating Peter, but which is too bad. But what happened is I think they wanted to have someone in that position because that position was necessary, that VC position to counter Hooli. However, Chris Welch was just irreplaceable. I think he was doing a career-defining performance. He's still missed. It was a great performance. Everybody's sad. And so I think they thought to themselves that they could sort of kill two birds with one stone. And I'm, of course, just speculating here because no one shares anything with me. But I think they thought they could address having a little bit more female power on the show, and also fill that position without competing and having a man come in. So when I received the sides, as we call it in the biz for the show, I read it and I had some very specific ideas about Lori and what I should look like and how I should approach it. Not wearing makeup and not making eye contact with a camera, speaking very, very quickly. I had a lot of text, a lot, pages and pages of text. And apparently, they'd really been looking for a very, very long time. And I think probably getting a girl to go in and not wear makeup. And I don't know that they knew that they wanted what I was going to do, but I think once they saw me do it, they told me that it was kind of the only thing that worked for them in the end. So that was great. And it's nice to see that probably the one time in my life when I wasn't worrying about how I looked was the one time I booked the job. So it tells you something, I guess, a little bit, that maybe we should all think about that less.
It fits the role perfectly, too. I think this show has so many characters that, especially in the beginning of the seasons, like season 1, season 2 are so like one-dimensional, very much fit all the boxes for that person, whereas like it requires a lot of commitment to get it to come across like as genuine, and that's why the character like Laurie is received so well, because it's not like you just, all right, I'm saying the lines, I'm doing these things, it's deadpan. Like it's more than deadpan, it's the whole approach. And like
I don't know, I think I'm pretty A to A. There's zero depth. That's
well, let me ask to your point, in the similarities of to Peter Gregory and Laurie, there was that episode, and I forget when it exactly is, if I'm not mistaken, I believe maybe season 3, but where Laurie actually assesses kind of all of the various investments that Peter Gregory had made, and her take on those things is very much different. So it was I think they chose to do that at a right time, so you can see, okay, there is a difference, and that perhaps Peter Gregory didn't have the full
because
genius.
we all look at him as the sesame seeds guy.
Yeah.
He's a genius, but for every sesame seed there was an invisibility cloak, right? So I think they did want to point out that with that kind of mad creative energy, there was also there are a lot of misses, which I think is true of genius. We only see we see the success, but we don't see all the failures. I really like it that they brought this year. Peter figures very prominently, obviously, even in absentia, because it was he had already conceived of this.
He laid the groundwork.
He laid the groundwork and had this patent for the new internet. I also really love, Matt's a tremendous actor and writer and director, as you know, but I really love what they've done with Gavin this year in terms of demonstrating. He's not just the villain, but there is a genius there too, and there is a desire to, grow and explore, and the pairing of those two together, even though it doesn't last. But there's a lot of pathos for him this year. I think Matt's done just brilliant work this year.
I think it ties into this episode. It kind of started last episode. It's coming into this episode in the sense that Gavin Belson, that just his name, as Richard continues to see, like, has a lot of weight. And even though, despite everything that happened at Hooli, obviously he's still top of mind for many people, and I appreciate that, even though he's gone on to do whatever Gavin is doing at the moment.
I think it's really interesting when you say that, because what we forget is that as viewers we're looking inside out, but that what you start seeing that is in the tech world and the VC world, they're looking outside in. They're not seeing the stuff that we know about Peter, about Gavin. They're seeing this outside view, and he is revered, and he's Bill Gates to them. He's Steve Jobs. We are seeing the swearing and the guy with the animal in the boardroom. The
other
plot.
Side.
We are seeing that other side,
the dark side.
But yes, it's great for them to kind of give some dimensionality to that character.
Well, I think it's really cool with the pairing of him and Richard too, because we're kind of seeing Richard as like he is. That Gavin Belson, that Peter Gregory, as a young guy, he is a genius. He has the potential, and he's like on his way to becoming like, holy shit, like Richard Hendricks, like they, say his name in those same regards. So it's cool to see how they interact now.
One of the things we've talked a lot about the last few weeks, the episodes that Gavin was in, this idea that somehow you're finding yourself feeling sorry for this guy that you hated so much the first 3 seasons, and it's just it's been really compelling, because there's those moments where he's like, you know what, he's right, actually, Richard really is being a dick. It's like, how is it that I'm feeling bad for? I don't know, and it's so great, and his absence is still felt. One of the things that you said about your character, Laurie Bream, when you were on this show 2 years ago, was that you hoped we never really learned that much of her backstory.
Right.
And for the most part, that's true. But this season, we've gotten some very impersonal little bullet points, like the fact that she's having her 4th child. She is pregnant and hadn't told anyone, and she gestured to the pregnancy as this, and also that Monica's her best friend. Talk a little bit about just sort of kerneling out such a little bit of information. I think that's great than if we actually found out a lot about her. Just, if we never hear any more about those things, if we never see the kids, that's sort of fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, I think they have, it's funny that I said that. Now I remember it, and I'm so glad. I think they have honored that. I think, it's interesting that they get critiqued a lot about in terms of the female issue, because I think they've done a really stunning job of doing some gender politics examination, and particularly this season. I mean, having a pregnant woman as a VC, and she's just tenacious in ignoring it. And that's what I love, is that the pregnancy, the family for her is just, it's inconsequential. Yeah. It really is. And it's background noise, and she's dealing with it, and maybe she's a good mother, maybe she's a not good mother, but it's none of your damn business, really. I mean, and when it comes down to it. And the whole, the baby shower ruse, that she's aware of. I love that they lay these little kernels in, but they don't get an enormous amount of exploration. I think it's more interesting that way. It's certainly funnier that way, and it's easier to learn my lines that way.
To our invisible co-host Jeff on Skype, what are some of your thoughts for what we've seen from Laurie this season, but also just sort of the arc we've had of the character since she was introduced?
Yeah, absolutely. What you were just talking about, Suzanne, is so interesting to me. Just kind of, I feel like we've always kind of seen Laurie as this stoic, emotionless, logical kind of entrepreneur in terms of her approach to business. But I feel like we've seen those impersonal details you're talking about this week have made me wonder if her personality is something that you feel has evolved as a necessity to survive as a woman in the industry, or if that's who she always was. Because I feel like there's something almost kind of badass about how Laurie is just a no-nonsense, kind of stereotypically masculine presence on the show. Do you think that's a necessity? Is that something she's evolved, or is that something she's always had to you?
Well, I mean, I think it goes back to when I was the first episode that she was introduced in, and then she says, I'm being scrutinized both from within and without. She's keenly aware. For somebody who lacks all social sense in some ways, or maybe she has tremendous social sense, she's bypassing all the things that women are trapped, all the social niceties that women are trapped by and probably stymied by. She just skips by them and dispenses with them. But she's keenly aware that she's being scrutinized. And so I do think that a certain amount of it is biological wiring, clearly. I mean, she certainly doesn't like to be touched or look at people, and there are things like that. I mean, she's certainly been touched, obviously, if I'm on my fourth
at least 4 times.
At least 4 times.
I mean, there are ways.
Yes, there are ways. No, and also, how she likes or does not like to be touched in her personal life is quite different than, what she is comfortable with in a social and work setting. But I do think that she's aware, and she is a survivor. And I do think there has been a growth from her. I think she was worried. I think she was operating in high-functioning panic mode in season 1. And you couldn't always see that, but there was definitely an undercurrent there. And I think she relaxed into it and has owned her position and was completely fearless about jumping ship. And I do think it's interesting about Monica being her best friend. I don't think best friend has a lot of resonance for Laurie, though. She certainly is not. I mean, I did go out to drinks with her that one time, but it was really purely strategic. It was not.
Yeah, and the interesting thing, though, is you see that Monica, ever since that moment, she seems to have, gotten a lot more comfortable, and now that obviously they're working together, I don't know, it just seems like obviously there's a lot more spring in her step than when she was in the office across from the men's room.
Right. I mean, I think Monica really actually does know how to handle Laurie in a very in a very lovely way, just like Amanda Crew, who's just a really underappreciated in some ways actress, because the work she does is so integral and necessary to the show, because she is the everyman. Thomas is not. Thomas is the lead, and he's carrying us on his little back up a hill. I mean, he's just brilliant.
Above average.
Yeah. but Monica, aka Amanda, she is actually our way in. She is the only real normalcy, and she has a remarkable ability to kind of interact with any of the characters in a comedic and yet kind of honest way, and she clearly knows how to deal effectively with everybody.
She really is the
and Amanda's
most,
that
like,
way too. I mean, she really is
normal one of them all, like you said. Like, she really is. That's
and
why she's easily
grounds
relatable.
the scenes that she's in. I mean, she really, really. I think, like, if you had Laurie and Peter Gregory in a scene together, it would be a lot to handle. That'd be a lot of neuroses. But you put Monica in the scene and what Amanda brings to it, and I think it really. It helps. It helps the show tremendously.
Well,
I really love her.
To that extent, having Monica ground sort of these large personalities really factored into the scene. Is basically the start of this latest episode, where we have Bachman and Laurie, and obviously, if the two of them spoke, without Monica in the room, I can't imagine that it would have been a particularly productive conversation. It probably would have been over, in about 30 seconds. Give us your thoughts in terms like how much it must pain Laurie to even have had to give Bachman that finder's fee for bringing valuable business to them.
Yeah, I mean, everything is cost benefit with cost benefit analysis with Laurie, and yes, it's tremendously painful. I don't think there's anyone she dislikes more than Bachman, and yet she sold him the company when he was the high. I mean, she really does look at things from a strategic and fiscal standpoint, and so yes, it's painful but necessary. Diamantopoulos' character, she really, truly, Russ, she hates more than Bachman, I would say. I mean, Diamantopoulos brings a certain je ne sais quoi of unspeakable, awfulness. Sorry, there may even be history there. That
is it because he's in the Tres Comas Club, or is it just?
it's Mike Judge has referenced a backstory there that will probably never be seen, but she does not like the tea he's pouring. But Bachman is like a mosquito that she can tolerate, and if she can deal with. And I don't think she's concerned by him. I think she's surprised, genuinely surprised, perplexed that he's able to bag such a big fish and bring him to them. But yeah, that scene is heartbreaking, though, isn't it? With Erlich, when he's
basically begging them, he's like, I'll take half of the finder's fee and and
I have to say,
hire me anyway. Yeah.
They're also, I mean, I'm a huge fan of the guys that I work with, and Amanda. But I mean, I think it shows just what a good actor TJ is, because TJ's just really, his gifts are magnificent. And I mean, the broad comedy he does is so, it's like a hurricane. It's not hard to work with, but you just don't know what's coming. And then he's able to really, I mean, it was heartbreaking doing that scene. I wanted to cry. I mean, Laurie doesn't want to cry about everything, but he was heartbreaking in it. And everything's been trimmed down so much because I was talking to you guys before, but there's so much plot this year that we just can't have anything extra, and they're fighting to keep everything in, and there's so much that didn't make it in. It breaks my heart because there's a lot of great stuff and a lot of great TJ that didn't make it in.
The great thing in that scene, you're right, there's so much heart and emotion to it, but at the same time, he manages to be the Bachman that we all know and love, where he, of course, mansplaining to Monica, even when she says she knows what it is.
No, I mean, he's always offensive.
Yeah, he can't help himself.
He will never stop being offensive, and yet he's sort of dear.
What was your reaction?
If I could quickly jump in, a question that I have that you briefly brought up, Suzanne, is that doing that scene with TJ, you said you as a person was feeling very emotionally connected to that moment with TJ, but I've heard actors say all the time that empathy is one of the things they have to tap into most to deliver an effective performance. But Laurie is like objectively non-empathetic.
Yeah,
so I would have to imagine that'd be a huge challenge on set to like navigate the emotions that you're feeling maybe as a person on set with your scene partner. but knowing you have to mitigate all of those feelings and do the scene in this cold, calculated way. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's true with being amused by people too. I mean, Monica / Amanda, she can enjoy things sometimes because she is such a different, her functionality emotionally is so different as a person and character. But I think most of the time I'm really pretty much, I have a lot in common with Laurie, and I'm enough in it that I don't really get distracted by other things. But sometimes, and I choose to look at it that Laurie I think Laurie has a moment where I don't think she's making a good business decision necessarily when she says yes. I think there's a lot.
I was confused as well in terms of Laurie being able to say yes.
I actually think there's a little part of her that sees and recognizes, and it shows that she's grown a little bit. That 2 years ago she would have just said no, but she knows. I think she recognizes that Monica is trying to do what she wants, and she knows that this is an existing relationship. I think there's a little part of her. I think
a lot of it is Monica, and like what you're saying about the best friend thing is where to her best friend probably means something different, but I think it in her strategic mind, best friend puts her in that partner place that gets them to where she obviously sees that Monica has something of value, otherwise she wouldn't want to be a partner with her. Right. And so that softening of Monica, at least for me, is the only way that they even we're gonna pay him, let alone her even thinking about saying yes after the begging and everything and stuff too.
Right.
But
I think that's part of it.
Yeah,
I really do.
I would say it seems like Laurie doesn't have any emotion towards Bachman, but she senses in the room that Monica's feeling emotional about it. So she's like, all right, I guess, yes, let's do this. And maybe, you brought this guy in here. Like you said, there's always the benefit analysis. Who knows who else he's going to accidentally sit down at a table at the coffee
and also at half cost.
Yeah.
Right, and also at half cost, that's true.
And I think I think she's doing a risk analysis really quickly, and she's like, how bad could it be? And we can get rid of him. Well, the answer is probably pretty damn bad, but I mean, the bigger problem is I do have to shut down my ability to find things amusing when I'm working with any of the guys, and that goes for Jimmy. Jimmy's really hard.
All those improv guys, I can't even imagine.
And Jimmy's just. It's been so great having Jin Yang have more to do this season. I've loved his story. I mean, I laugh on set. And I laugh at home watching him. I love watching it because Jimmy, he's bloody funny, man.
Well, before we dive into the Jin Yang story, Phil, you had something you were going to say?
Well, I just wanted to ask you about TJ specifically because obviously the news came out, and I think fans, if we didn't ask, they'd be wondering why we didn't ask you what your sort of feelings and opinions are going into the next season.
He's a huge asshole, and I'm glad he's leaving.
That's what everyone in the cast said.
No, I mean, listen, it's heartbreaking. I think it's really, really heartbreaking, and I think the show is bigger than TJ. I think it'll be a different show without TJ. It's surprising that. Mike Judge and Alec and HBO don't loop me in on the decision-making process, given, but they don't.
It's a crime.
No, I mean, I think my understanding is this is a mutual thing, and there's no bad guy in this situation, and everybody's sad. I think TJ's sad. I think HBO's sad. I think there were a lot of things at play, clearly, and I'm certainly not privy to them, and I hope we see him again. I certainly don't rule it out, but what the hell do I know? Not much. But it's heartbreaking because I love working with him. And also, just on a personal note, TJ was really, really kind to me when I entered a show after a season. He was really generous and kind and supportive. And I really love working with him. I don't think I've worked with. I mean, Ryan Reynolds was like that too a lot. It was very, very his dynamism on set, and he's just constantly surprising. But I'm older now. I was a kid when I was working with Ryan, and I'm sort of able to. I'm in a very different place. I'm able to kind of sit back and enjoy the people I work with, and just really just be there. And I'm not worried about getting other jobs. I kind of don't care about getting any other jobs other than the job I'm on, and then being with my kids at home. And so I really am able to go into work and just appreciate the writers and the directors and the actors. It's nice. It's a nice feeling.
Yeah, you're not stressed or stuck in your head.
No, I'm
or
not.
anything.
And I just can, and I really enjoy TJ. He's brilliant and funny and heartbreaking at times, and I hope we see him again. But I do think, I don't think the show is. I think the show is about the tech industry and about VC, and it'll be a different show without him. But I do believe this isn't the Mary Tyler Moore show without Mary Tyler Moore. I don't think that's. But I do think adjustments will need to be made. Yeah, and I'm sad.
Well,
really sad.
Good for TJ that one of the people he'll be working with, of course, is Ryan Reynolds on Deadpool 2. So
I know. I'm not worried
circle.
about TJ, for God's sake. He's the workingest man, and but he's busy. He's really
that's
busy.
That's what I was gonna say last week. Is I'm from at least what I've heard, it was very mutual, and it sounds like it was very mutual.
I
and
think it is.
He's just in a very different place now than where he was when the show started. Like, he was big, but like after Deadpool, and like he's in 2 or 3
the
movies
Emoji
this
movie.
year. He's been doing a lot of guest features.
But he's creating projects, and he's doing all this kind of stuff. Now all the guys are. All the guys are really doing. They all work a lot. They're all busy. It's so different now. You young people. I'm just like go to auditions and work and leave. Everybody's generating stuff. It's just different. Everybody, and I find it exhausting even hearing about it. They talk about their schedules and what they're doing, and in between doing stand up and improv and writing projects, and I'm just like, oh my Lord, I can barely get dinner made for the children and show up at work with my face.
Shout out to Thomas Middleditch, Captain Underpants.
I know.
I actually did see it because on Pop, we have a sister network called Popcorn Talk, and we do a show there where we review movies, and so I got a chance to see it, and I really enjoyed it. I thought
did you?
Because
I'm dying to go because of Thomas and dreading to go because it's bloody Captain Underpants. And
they make light of it. It's fun. It's fun.
My kids read it, and I roll my eyes. I'm like, why can't you be reading Watership Down and The Ring Cycle? And they're like, and I'm like, you're too old for that book now, and they won't stop. Like, even my 12-year-old still will. You'll see him poking through it. There's something just that's absolutely a magnet.
But I was traumatized by Watership Down when I was a kid because there was the movie version of it, and I still can see those bleeding bunnies.
I know
everywhere.
it's horrible. It is horrible. I was afraid my 12-year-old didn't understand it. He read it when he was young. He was going into 3rd grade, and I was worried he wasn't getting it. And then I walked out one morning on the couch, and he was weeping, and I was like, oh, he got it.
He got it.
If you don't weep during Watership Down.
Well, let's dive into some more stuff from this episode because we mentioned it, even though it's not the main story. Let's talk about Jin Yang and the new fridge, which I thought was very funny. That he starts talking about it, and then he explains to Bachman that he's already ordered it, and it's like, well, then why are you talking to me about it? To make you feel bad because you're fat and poor.
Just the way that he says it too.
Yeah.
It's not even like a haha, we're friends, we're joking, I'm ribbing you. It's like so deadpan, like.
No, he
these are
hates
just
him now.
facts.
He hates him now. After he tried to evict him, there is no love there. I'm not sure that. It really has that kind of Gilligan. It has the Gilligan and Captain,
the skipper,
the skipper and Gilligan thing. Except for it's unclear who's Gilligan, who's the skipper at all times. It's constantly changing, like who is Gilligan, because you feel for a long time like Jin Yang is Gilligan, and now you feel like. Bachman.
The coin is flipped.
The coin is flipped. But yeah, I love it. I love having him rich, and really, his delivery's so good. He can say 2 words, and he has me on the floor when he said that line about because you're fat.
And he said, why did you say all these things? Just because I can.
Because I can.
And later when he realizes that the yogurt's expired, so he's like, great, I can go give this to Eric.
Yeah. And
I won't die. Now I can give it to Bachman.
Right, exactly.
And Martin, and then Martin just becomes
let's
obsessed.
talk a little bit, Phil. Your thoughts about how Guilfoyle suddenly is obsessed with that refrigerator. How dare it try to tell him to have a nice day?
I mean, I would actually venture to say that he would have been the first one to like it. Especially I thought when the fridge told him you're running out of beer, that would have been like, oh, That's right. Yeah. So
but I think
Janine,
it's
go get me more
North
beer.
the
Coast
way
Old
it told
Rasputin.
him.
Best beer in the world.
It's the way it told him. It told him in a very friendly way.
I just don't think. I think
the
that
noises.
he likes tech for the hard tech. He does not like that. He doesn't like the trappings of our
He doesn't like
shitty
the
society.
consumer.
Yeah, he doesn't like that stuff.
Tech light for the
that's
soft people, which is funny considering we found out that he runs on a Mac this episode when the power flashes up and his computer starts back up. I'm assuming it's not. He's not running on Mac OS, but I thought that was interesting. He was on Apple Tech, being Guilfoyle.
Go ahead,
I have
Jeff.
a question related to Guilfoyle because I thought this was like such a quintessential Guilfoyle episode, especially Laurie or as Suzanne, as you mentioned, his reaction to any frills attached to technology. Have we ever gotten to see Guilfoyle and Laurie interact? And does part of you think they would just hit it off?
Yeah, no, they have interacted briefly. When I was in Tobolowsky's office, the guys come in, I'm in the chair, and then I leave. So I am with. I've been in scenes with them, but only in group scenes because he doesn't really do stuff on his own. Like Bachman's always an ambassador, or I'm dealing with Thomas straight up. But because he's more backroom, I've never dealt with him alone. Yeah, that would be interesting because she would have trouble managing him, I think. Yeah. I mean, everybody has trouble managing. He's unmanageable.
Right.
But
it would be hard for her to wrap her brain around that she couldn't manage him.
I mean,
they would just go back and forth.
I mean, I think he would have a certain grudging respect for her because she doesn't get stuck.
I feel like that's how it would
end. The bullshit
end.
Of normal, yeah.
She would say something so like utterly just straightforward that he would just be like, "Well, I can't argue with that."
And then I think, one of the nice things is because Laurie could have been gone fast, but I think the guys didn't. Even when she dropped them and picked them up, they recognized that unlike Gavin or unlike a lot of the other people, she was doing things, ethically and fiscally. Yeah. There's a certain amount of trust there, and so I think she never gave up her credibility with them. Yeah. I think you get what you see and you see what you get.
Everybody else has been very emotional. There's some drama
or just duplicitous, or duplicitous or something or grabby. I think she wants to make money, but I think she's honest.
Yeah. Very straightforward.
She keeps things close to her vest sometimes, but I don't think she doesn't lie. So.
But I love him spending 12 hours with his own server Anton.
Yeah.
And Dinesh is surprised that he blows off his regular work to do it, but you feel like to Guilfoyle, he knows he can get that regular work done in half the time that it takes.
Exactly.
That it takes Dinesh. So obviously, this is what's important, and it's so funny at the end. It's just to basically be the little cartoon that pops up on the fridge.
And then he makes the sound effects for work in his favor too, which is just great.
One of the other storylines we dealt with was Bachman getting the call from Ed Chen and being invited to the floor, to Oracle Arena, and realizing, of course, that they wanted him to play in a basketball game, not watch a basketball game.
It's funny because there's so many gifs of TJ taking his shirt off and being like, "Look at my tummy," and it's interesting seeing him become. There was a lot of vulnerability for him in this episode. Seeing him vulnerable, when he needs a job, and seeing him. Not wanting to take off his shirt near Ed Chen, and he's not willing to kind of be balls to walls with these guys. I mean, he's really not, and it's interesting seeing that other side. He's deflating a little bit,
being very vulnerable.
Yeah, and
but he tries so desperately. That's what I love about it, and just even down to the most minuscule thing. Hey, can I borrow your hammer?
Yeah.
Those are screws.
Yeah.
But no, God bless him. He goes and gets a basket. He can fix that problem in a week before next week's game. I mean, yeah. Ed Chen's really that. He was a terrific actor, and I think they enjoyed him so much when they realized that he was great that they. That's what these guys will do. They'll keep creating story and put somebody in places when they're like, oh, this guy is he's easy to work with. He's smart. He's good. He was he looked great in the role. I mean, he was really perfect in it. So it was, and he was nice to have on set. Nice guy.
Yeah, I love Bachman's line when they're on the phone. He pulls the phone out to kind of brag about it, and he's like, "Oh, well, make sure you get a picture with Steph Curry." He's like, "Oh, I will if she's there."
Yeah, but even in all this vulnerability that we're talking about for Bachman, of course, how he masks that is to insult the scrawny code jockeys and the incredible shrinking Hendricks here, and whatever the fuck Jared is, which is of course a great line.
He's rude. I mean, the man is rude. He's really rude.
Which sort of goes back to one of the other stories that is running through the episode, and the episode starts with one of my favorite recurring characters, Richard's doctor, who can't believe that he had sex, and of course with all the questions like, with what? And this idea that Richard is shrinking, I thought was very funny throughout. Phil, what were some of the moments that you liked as we dealt with this problem?
I mean, it just, in some sense, the doctor scene was kind of put in out of nowhere, and yet they found this brilliant way to continue it throughout. Because as he's orchestrating these meetings and everything, just even like, you little prick. No, I'm a big prick. and just, again, the same way the fridge eats away at Guilfoyle, these are the things that eat away at Richard Hendricks, and you kind of sort of compartmentalize it, and you say, these people aren't really meant to run a company because they don't know how to stay clear-headed and focus on what's actually important here.
And and can we just talk about these writers? I mean, they're doing such different kind of work than I feel like they're doing just such different kind of work than a lot of other comedy writers, because yes, it's a funny bit. Like, they love the doctor, they bring him back. And it's a funny bit, like, you're shrinking and the sex stuff. It's funny. But then, like, it has all this metaphorical stuff, too. Just in terms of, like, first of all, him being eaten away just by the life of being in a sitcom. Because, what happens to you when you're the little engine that can't ever. And then also, he has a compression algorithm. I mean, that's his whole life is about making things smaller. I mean, so it's funny. I mean, it's so clever. I mean, everything they do is so, like, the more you think about it, the more you realize how clever it is. I have tremendous respect for our writers. They really do.
I think along those lines, too, what you mentioned, Laurie, with the shrinking and the compression, I think in general, like, the idea of masculinity was so interestingly explored in this episode. And, like, what you were saying with Bachman being vulnerable. And I love that his in of trying to get a job at Bream Hall was that he could give you guys a perspective that a man needs to have to understand the complex gender dynamics of Silicon Valley. And I thought even, the shrinking metaphor was such a funny way to kind of explore ideas of what it means to kind of be a man or be masculine in the world of Silicon Valley. It was so interesting to me.
Yeah, and just be hacked away, kind of bit by bit by bit. Yeah, I mean, it really, it's interesting. I mean, I don't know. I don't remember whether that was in actually the first draft. That might have. They definitely have big macro ideas that they thread from the beginning of the season. I mean, the writers they're not just like making it up as they go, but there is certain stuff that they weave in, and then they make room for some improvisation that happens, of course, on set. Not usually. We have to be careful about plot points and things like that, because things are very text specific on our show. I mean, there is it's real, like pretty much everything. There's not much that's not doable or will be doable soon.
Yeah. Well, the other flip side of there's also the tech talk, but then there's also guy talk, and that's what I love. Like, in the case of like Richard also being sort of more masculine, he's learning all these terms, and that's what I love about him, is that whenever he's presented with sort of facts and that he can be sort of a more of a man's man, he tries to utilize them, and it just never works out in his favor. Disastrous.
I mean, that's another example of how I thought they were dealing really effectively with like some gender issues in this. Yeah. When he gets that little meeting together to try and go after the troll, the patent troll, the patent troll, and then he starts mentioning Limp Bizkit, and having the women in the room just.
She's like, sorry, I was never in a frat.
Is this why Gavin didn't want to work with you any longer? Because you're just bloody offensive. But like this kind of language that is very pervasive, this culture of masculinity, of kind of like late 20-something to early 30s, white, libertarian, heavily masculine. That's the culture in Silicon Valley, and you can't like erase it. You can't create a show that like erases it, but to like be able to explore it nevertheless in a humorous and kind of
You're able to poke
non-critical
fun
way, like
and start a conversation.
Start a
also at the
conversation
same
about it.
time.
But I thought they did that really effectively by having a man who can't really handle it talk to women who can handle it and are appalled. I mean, I thought it was great.
Let's talk about the Limp Bizkit at the center of the episode, which I'm going to admit I did not know that's what that term meant. So thank you, Silicon Valley, for making sure that I know now. But the lawsuit, the patent troll, Stuart Burke, who we meet, and he has pictures of all the people that he's sued, and Richard's going to be the next one. Nate, what do you think about when you hear this? When you see the story unfold? Obviously, we also get a visit from Ben Feldman and other recurring characters. Richard's lawyer Ron LaFont, I believe is his name. Your thoughts on how that story played out from beginning?
I love Ron, so it's always good to see more of him. But just when we get that immediate introduction and we see the picture with Stevie Wonder, and it's like, oh, you're Stevie Wonder's lawyer. He's like, no, I sued him. He couldn't see it coming. Like, it's like the perfect setup. Not only is it funny, but also just like who the guy is too. Like, you not only did you sue a blind guy, you sued Stevie Wonder. Like, everybody loves Stevie Wonder. Like, he doesn't have any enemies. How could you do that? But his reaction with the lawyer is always great. I feel like they present him in this way of where it seems like he's really inept and he doesn't know what he's talking about. But in actuality, usually what he ends up saying to Richard is usually the right thing to do. Richard just never listens. So I thought it was really interesting to see.
Yeah, Ron LaFont gives good advice.
Yeah, and he tells him straight up, just pay the 20 grand. Just do it. But of course, and I think what's really cool seeing this plotline also with the Richard thing in general is like, what you see in the beginning of the episode is his pride also being hurt too. And so for the rest of the episode, he's trying to like prove how big a man he is. And that's part of the only reason why, in my opinion, that it even goes this far. I think,
and he's type A too. I mean, Richard's he has to control things,
right?
And so we've seen him fight these battles before, these disastrous battles, but he can't help himself. Partly because of moral rectitude. Like, he really is an upstanding guy, and he can't stand to see people getting away with shortcuts,
right?
In the tabs versus spaces.
He's not a gray area guy,
right? No, it's the tabs versus spaces. Like, he can't stand to see people cheating, taking shortcuts. And so he's going to go after and God bless. Like, it's great to have these white knights. He's just such an ineffective white knight sometimes. But then, he gets there in the end.
Yeah, but what we see is, of course, his very awkward people skills we alluded to, with trying to get people together, and instead they just sort of strike out on their own. And
he ruined. He could have done that. That was doable by someone. Probably by Bachman probably could have done it.
An email could have solved it. I like that idea. Just an email could have solved this.
Yeah,
it probably could have.
Totally.
Before we run out of time, I think it's very important we talk about Ed Chambers, who we were introduced to, who is Jared's alter ego. Let's talk to our own Jared on Skype. What were your thoughts about Ed Chambers? I almost called you Jared. Jeff.
You can call him Donald, too.
Yeah, Donald.
Yeah, or Donald, right. I mean, like, this was predictably brilliant. I mean, like, we've been talking about this has been a great season for character, and I think virtually every character on this show has been widened for me. Like, I feel like we've seen different shades of Laurie, for example, Suzanne, but, like, this has just been a knockout season for Jared, and just so freaking weird. And, like, getting to see Zach Woods play, like, douche bro, like, speaking of masculine, was one of the funniest things I think we've seen all season. This was just, from a writing, acting, and idea standpoint, just blew my socks off.
And then realizing that Jared's scared of his own... He's scared of the man.
Yeah, oh my God.
He's clearly
it was like a bit of a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde
he's
thing.
Scared of
him. It was so funny.
I mean, he eats his lunch every day.
Every day he eats Jared's
lunch. His lunch.
Well, I was going to say that was part of my favorite jokes because it's so... It is literal because he does.
He does.
The same person. But the way the conviction that
and just when he pulls Richard aside to say, I had to let him go. Like, you could see it pained him to have to let
Richard's just like, what? What?
Out of sight, out of mind.
They keep going, he's you.
Out of reality.
Yeah, that was really, it's really fun to see him I mean, Zach can do anything. Zach.
I really
is
hope we get more.
Zach
Ed
is
Chambers.
magic, and all these little, all these little things, these little insights, like his response to the Limp Bizkit stuff. Sometimes it's a wheat thing.
Yeah, which was amazing.
I
was gonna
all these
mention
little
that.
horrible windows into the tortured life of Jared.
Yeah, like when the blood boy knew him, and he was just like somebody from the group home, and it's a lot. It's much like Lori. It's like we just moved past these terrible things about Jared that we never need to know.
Yeah.
Before we run out of time, we're going to do our regular predictions. But since you obviously know what happens this season, Suzanne, I thought I'd ask you, what would you like to see happen for your character? Not necessarily in the course of the show. Like, let's just look 5 years ahead so that you're not predicting things that might happen in the show.
Yeah, well, I mean, I hope I'm not pregnant anymore. At some point, I would like to stop being pregnant. We shall see. That's interesting. I would like, there's a part, I love VC stuff. I'm really interested in VC stuff. I think America likes VC stuff too. So I wouldn't mind seeing some other VC stuff, things that are going on for Monica and Lori. I mean, I loved it when Jin Yang came and pitched to us, the Smokeation one, and so I like that. But I don't, I'm happy with anything they give me, but I am interested in VC stuff, so I wouldn't mind seeing some of her other. Those pitch meetings are crazy.
With that being said, it is indeed time for our predictions.
And now, your AfterBuzz TV predictions.
Phil, we'll let you go first from that end of the desk.
I'm wondering, now that we've solved the patent troll, I'm wondering kind of how it all ties in. We're getting close to the end of the season, and, I sort of, the way they sort of always do it is they go towards something and leave us with a cliffhanger for the next season. So I'm wondering what that is, and for so long we've seen Pied Piper succeed and yet not, and so I want to know what the next round of success but not success is. And I'm very curious. And we haven't really had an episode where they join together and really start to attack things, like in the past, whether it was, TechCrunch, Disrupt, and all those things. So I'd like to see an episode where, meeting of the minds, if you will.
Nate?
I'm going to piggyback on what Phil said, and I think what we're going to get is some type of big success for the company, and then Mia's going to come out of nowhere and, just screw everything up.
Yeah.
And I think that there's also going to be more impact on Guilfoyle's use of Anton in this episode for the server. I think because of how much they talked about the networking stuff, I think somehow it's going to have created their backdoor. Maybe it's the fridge or something that gets hacked by Mia or something.
Well, similarly, because they keep mentioning Mia throughout all these episodes, even since she's been gone, my prediction is that she will come back, and by the end of the season, Dinesh will marry her just because he's so scared of her that there's no way out for him. I'm sorry, were you going to finish it? Did you have a thought you wanted to finish?
I was just going to say, I'm like I said earlier, I really hope. I don't think we've seen the last of Ed Chambers. I feel like with that goodbye, I feel like
he's gonna. I think Jared's gonna have to put the Ed Chambers hat on again in an important moment. Jeff Graham, your predictions.
Well, this is a perfect transition because the Ed Chambers thing, we've kind of been discussing all season that Jared seems like he's quietly heading towards just a complete meltdown. I don't know whether or not that's true, but this episode did introduce legitimate split personalities. So I just kind of wonder if we're going to see some kind of just bananas freak out from Jared. That's my prediction. I don't know, but it seems like his sanity has just been slowly disintegrating all season.
Yeah, including last week when they moved the Gavin Belson picture into his room and he was very uncomfortable with it. I think you're absolutely right. We're going to get to see, who knows what we're going to get to see, but it'll be fun to watch. Well, with that being said, we are out of time. Thank you so much to Suzanne Cryer. You're on Twitter at I am Suzanne Cryer, I believe.
I am. I'm glad you reminded me because sometimes I'm not effective. Yes, that is.
That's how people can keep tabs on you. I don't know if you're on any other social media, but if they go to Twitter, that's where they'll find you.
They will.
Phil, what would you like to promote here?
Just go to philsvitek.com and obviously keep watching not only Silicon Valley, but our show as well.
Nate?
Again, you can find me on social media at Dog Like Nate. I also host the Better Call Saul after show tonight and also the finale of Dear White People this week.
And I'm Christian Bladt at Christian DMZ. You can see me tomorrow night on AfterBuzz with the Trump Report, and well, that'll be fun. Let's just put it that way. For everybody here, thanks so much, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
See you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.